agriculture is key to Kenya's economy, contributing 26% of the gross domestic product and another 27% of GDP indirectly through linkages with other sectors. The sector employs more than 40% of the total population and more than 70% of Kenya's rural population. In the global south, concerns for food insecurity, youth bulge, and youth unemployment have drawn attention to the youth agriculture nexus. According to the National Council for Population and Development in Kenya, a youth bulge occurs when more than 20% of the country's population is youth. Youth comprise of 78% of human population and 64% of the unemployed in Kenya. Yet only 10% of Kenya's youth work in agriculture. In fact, recent research confirms that only 20% of young people aspire to be farmers.
A drumbeat called drum me the ancient sands, whispers of stories in shifting lands, through the winds that hum in skies so blue. A journey begins from old to new.
Youth agricultural labor has declined sharply from about 58.9% of youth employment in agriculture in 1990 to 28.5% by 2020. Agriculture remains the dominant sector in Kenya's economy. The agricultural sector in Kenya employs over 40% of the total population and more than 70% of the rural populace. Most youth are moving out of the agricultural sector to urban areas to look for better opportunities, leaving agriculture to the elderly. The average age of farmers in Kenya is above 60 years, and the farmers predominantly engage in traditional and subsistence farming practices. Out of about 7 million registered farmers in Kenya's agricultural registry, only 1.7 million, which is about 24%, are youth. The statistics paint a sobering picture. Between 2015 and 2020, an estimated 277,000 youth migrated annually from rural to urban areas, driven by the stark reality that rural unemployment stood at 17.3% compared to 13.8% in urban areas. This exodus is creating a vicious cycle. As young people leave, rural areas are left with an aging population, leading to reduced economic activity and innovation. With 67% of youth aged 15 to 34 being unemployed and over 1 million young people entering the labor market annually, the pressure to abandon farming intensifies. Yet here's the irony. 77% of youth from villages where crop farming is the primary economic activity expressed strong interest in agricultural work. The problem isn't that youth hate farming, it is that the system has made it nearly impossible for them to succeed in it. This demographic shift has profound implications for Kenya's food security and economic future. When you combine an aging farmer population practicing subsistence methods with the mass departure of educated, tech-savvy youth who could modernize agriculture, you create a perfect storm. The agricultural sector, which still employs 40% of the total population and contributes significantly to the GDP, is facing a knowledge and labor crisis. Without young farmers to adopt modern techniques, invest in productivity-enhancing technologies, and drive innovation in the sector, Kenya risks watching its agricultural capacity decline precisely when the population is booming. The question isn't whether we can afford to lose our youth from farming, it's whether we can survive it. With a population expected to reach 60 million by 2030, Kenya cannot feed itself on the backs of an elderly subsistence farmers alone. Kenya's youth are not avoiding farming because they are lazy or disconnected from the land. They are avoiding a system that has consistently failed them. Agriculture today is associated with uncertainty, delayed payments, exploitative middlemen, climate shocks, and low social status. Most young people do not own land, cannot access affordable credit, and have no guaranteed markets for what they grow. Farming, as currently structured, offers high risks with little protection, while urban hustles, however unstable, at least offer promise of faster cash flows. In a country where the average farmer is over 60 years old, agriculture has become a sector people age into, not one young people choose. Beyond economics, there is also an image problem. Farming in Kenya is still framed as a last resort, work for those who failed in school or urban life, reinforced by the stigma of dirty hands and rural hardship. Meanwhile, urban hustle culture is aggressively glamorized. Social media celebrates quick money, tech jobs, forex trading, content creation, and white-collar lifestyles, often detached from their real success rates. Very few young people see farmers portrayed as successful, innovative, or aspirational, despite agriculture being one of the few sectors with real scale potential. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have quietly shaped the career aspirations, making visibility and perceived status more influential than long-term viability. In this environment, farming struggles not just against poor policy, but against a narrative that tells young Kenyans that success must be urban, clean, and digital, even when the data suggests otherwise. Successive governments have announced youth-focused programs meant to reverse this trend, but many have collapsed between policy and practice. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund, agricultural input subsidies, and youth agribusiness grants were designed to unlock capital and inputs. Yet on the ground, access is opaque, politicized, and bureaucratic. Funds are often delayed, inadequately dispersed, or captured by individuals with connections rather than farmers with viable projects. Subsidized fertilizer frequently arrives late or is diverted, while irrigation and mechanization programs remain pilots that never scale. The result is a credibility crisis. Young people no longer believe government agricultural programs are meant for them. This is where the entrepreneur economy enters the picture. Money allocated for tractors, irrigation equipment, extension services, and training is routinely absorbed at the procurement stage, spent on feasibility studies, overpriced contracts, or political connected suppliers, while farms remain untouched.
This is a great day for the district.
Agriculture
Indeed,
becomes a business
Minister,
opportunity for
to our
contractors,
mutual
not farmers.
prosperity.
As agricultural economist Professor Shem Migot Adola has reportedly urged, Kenya's problem is not a lack of policy, but a failure of implementation. Weak institutions, fragmented responsibility between national and county governments, and incentives that reward rent-seeking over results. Until public agricultural spending is measured by yields, farmers' incomes, and youth participation, not by budgets and launches, Kenya's fields will remain empty and its promises broken. When agriculture weakens, the damage does not stop at the farm gate. It ripples through the entire economy. Declining domestic food production pushes prices upwards, contributing directly to inflation and eroding household purchasing power, especially for the urban poor who spend a large share of their income on food. As farming contracts, upstream and downstream jobs are lost. Transporters, millers, traders, and processors all feel the squeeze. Historically, food price spikes in Kenya have coincided with periods of heightened social tension, protests, and political instability. Because food is not just an economic good, it's a social stabilizer. Food insecurity deepens these risks. As local production fails to keep pace with population growth, Kenya becomes increasingly dependent on imports for staples like maize, wheat, and rice. Kenya already imports a significant portion of its food, with food imports making around 18.8% of the total merchandise imports in 2023. This exposes the country to global supply chain shocks, wars, export bans, climate disasters, and currency fluctuations, none of which Kenya controls. When global prices rise and supply tightens, the cost is immediately passed on to the Kenyan consumers, while government subsidies strain public finances. In such a system, national food security is effectively outsourced to global markets, leaving millions vulnerable to decisions made far beyond Kenya's borders. The geopolitical implications are even more severe. History shows that food crises can destabilize nations, intensify inequality, and fuel conflict, both within countries and across borders. In regions already facing climate stress and unemployment, food shortages can accelerate rural-urban migration, increase cross-border displacement, and strain regional security. For Kenya, a country positioned as an economic anchor in East Africa, sustained food insecurity will weaken its regional influence and internal cohesion. Inaction, therefore, is not neutral. It's a choice with economic, social, and geopolitical consequences that compound over time. Despite the challenges, a different future is already emerging. Across Kenya, youth-led agribusinesses are redefining what farming looks like by using technology to reduce risk and increase returns. Hydroponic and greenhouse farming around urban areas is producing higher yields on smaller plots. Agri-tech apps are linking farmers directly to markets and input suppliers, and precision tools like mobile soil testing and digital extension services are cutting costs and losses. These models can prove that agriculture does not have to be manual, isolated, or low income. It can be data-driven, scalable, and profitable when innovation replaces tradition. Policy, however, must catch up to this reality. If the government is serious about youth participation, it must move beyond announcements to implementation. This means protecting agricultural land through zoning, creating transparent youth land leasing programs, expanding affordable irrigation, and redefining agricultural finance to favor production rather than paperwork. Youth-specific grants should be tied to measurable outputs, access to shared machinery, and guaranteed markets through school feeding programs, hospitals, and public institutions. Agriculture must be treated as an industrial sector, not as a poverty intervention, with incentives that reward efficiency, value addition, and long-term investment. Finally, the path forward is not only for policymakers. Young Kenyans themselves have agency. This starts with changing how agriculture is viewed and discussed online, in schools, and in communities, and supporting initiatives that demand accountability in public spending. It means exploring farming not just as labor, but as business, forming cooperatives, leveraging technology, and learning from those already succeeding. Kenya's food future will not be secured by speeches or imports, but by a generation willing to reclaim land, modernize how it is used, and insist that agriculture works for them.